Ugh, this level. I woke up today thinking that I would make a nice, simple little level guide, but then I realized that the level I'm dealing with is alternate R2B3, which looks fairly simple at first glance. There's only 3 different zones you have to go into, 2 alarms to set defenses for, and a single uplink you need to complete in order for your extraction scan to appear. But once you start looking at the design of the level and where everything is positioned at, you start to realize just how much more there is to it. And the more there is to a level, the longer and more detailed my level guides have to become. I sometimes hate my job. Hello everyone, Professor Scalar here, and welcome to the alternate R2B3 level guide. Just like always, we are starting off with the recommended loadout, and this time around, that is going to be a bio tracker, a mine deployer, a C-foam launcher, and then either a burst sentry or a sniper sentry, depending on which one you prefer more. The reason for the bio tracker in this level is because things are designed in a way where during the alarms and the uplinks, enemies can potentially come from multiple different directions all at once, which can complicate things a little bit because being surrounded by enemies is really never a good situation to find yourself in. So having a bio tracker, that way our teammates are more aware of exactly where the enemies are located and how close or far they are from us and just where our attention needs to be primarily focused at, that way we don't get blindsided, will help out quite a bit in the long run. That, and if you do bring the sniper sentry, you have bio tracker symbiosis with it, so bringing a bio tracker will make that sentry a whole lot more efficient. When it comes to the mine deploy and the C-foam launcher, we're going to be utilizing these a lot through the entirety of the level. Many different doors we could shut, mine, and C-foam to buy us more time during the alarm doors or the uplink, so I would recommend that you definitely bring these 2 tools with you, and I would also recommend that all, if not most of the tool refill you find this level, go into these 2 tools. We are bringing a sentry with us, and this is going to give us some extra firepower during these situations, and will definitely help out during some of the alarms when we do some funnel strategies. But I feel like the amount of ammunition you start off with that sentry is enough to last you for most, if not the entirety of the level, assuming you're not just placing it down every single time you wake up a room with a few enemies in it. Dropping down into level, you'll see that your main objective is to find a specific terminal and create an uplink with it, and this terminal will always be located either in Zone 166 or Zone 167. And you're going to be starting off inside Zone 163, and in this zone, you can actually find the security doors to both 166 and 167. The thing is though, the game can't be that easy, and these security doors are locked and require color keycards in order to open them up. And those color keycards will always be located to the north inside Zone 164. So that's the only area we can actually head to next. The thing is though, the security door to Zone 164 has a Class 4 alarm tied to it, and both the security door to 166 and 167 have Class 5 alarms tied to them. And since all these security doors are in close proximity, the doors throughout the zone are basically tied to each of the alarms, which means that if we shut every single one of the doors for the first alarm, we'll have nothing to protect us against the second alarm, and that's going to leave us wide open. So we need to first hop onto a terminal and query where our uplink terminal is. That way we know which one of the 2 side zones we're going into, and we can more properly set up a defense. So for those of you who are heading to the west inside Zone 166, your defense should look something like this. We're going to be shutting, mining, and C-foaming these 3 doors, as enemies could potentially break down every single one of them, and then we're going to be leaving these 2 doors open, that way we can preserve them for that later alarm. However, if you're heading into Zone 167 to the east, your defense is rather going to look like this. We're going to be shutting, mining, and C-foaming this 1 door right here, but that's the only one. These other 4 doors we have to leave open, that way we can save them for that alarm, since every single one of those doors are very important for it. And since it's a Class 5 alarm as opposed to this one being a Class 4, it's better to have more defenses for the more difficult alarm. As for your sentry, it doesn't matter which one of the 2 zones you have to head into, you're going to place it somewhat like you can see in the background footage. I'm placing it here in this area, that way no matter which one of the routes enemies take to get into the room, they will more than likely have to go through the line of fire of that sentry, so we'll have some pretty good coverage in that area. As for you and your teammates, you're going to want to primarily focus on the scans, but you do want to also keep in mind that enemies can get to you incredibly quickly, depending on exactly how your setup is. But once you have your defenses set up how you want them and you're good to go, activate the security door, work on the scans, deal with the enemies, and then once everything is finished, go out and pick up any of the explosive mines that did not go off, and of course grab your sentry and bring it along with you. And with all that in hand, you can then open up the security door and head to Zone 164. Aside from the color keycards and the resources and the fair amount of enemies that'll be inside Zone 164, there's really not a whole lot special to the zone itself. So just go through here like you normally would, dealing with those enemies and keeping an eye out for boxes and lockers. And once you have everything you need, you're going to want to head to the northwestern corner of it where you'll find the security door to Zone 165. This security door is purely optional and you do not have to go in here in order to complete the level, but I would actually recommend it to your average group. And the reason for that is because the security door itself just has a full team scan tied to it, so no alarm whatsoever, and inside there will be a pretty fair amount of resources. And the only thing standing in between you and those resources would just be 6 giant strikers, and more often than not, those 6 giant strikers are split evenly among the 3 separate rooms. So 2 giants per room, pretty easy to deal with either by stealth killing them, by shooting them, or heck, if you have somebody on your team with a sniper rifle, they just simply have to shoot twice and as long as they got somewhat decent aim, that's all you really gotta do. So definitely head in here, deal with those giants, grab all those resources, and then once you have all that, you can then head back out to Zone 163 and head to the western end or to the eastern end, depending on which one of the two you have to go to, plug your colored key card in to unlock the door, and then you can start setting up your defenses for the Class 5 alarm. If you and your team are heading to the west inside Zone 166, your map overlay is going to look something like this. As you can see, there are 3 separate doors. We want to make sure that we shut mine and seafoam. This door right here, we're going to be shutting, but we do not need to mine or seafoam it, as we'll be leaving this door over here open. So any of the enemies that spawn down the southeastern corner and come up through that room will go through that open door and not the shut one that's much closer to us and our teammates. As for a sentry, we're going to place it somewhere towards the northeastern side of the room. That way it's facing not only towards that door that we're leaving open to funnel enemies, but also towards that open security door, so any of the enemies that come from that general direction have to go through the line of fire of that sentry. As for those of you who are heading to the east inside Zone 167 though, your map overlay is going to look like this. There's only going to be 2 doors that we're going to be shutting, mining, and seafoaming, as these are the 2 more than likely doors they will try to break down to get to us. These 2 doors we're just going to simply leave shut. Very minimal chance they'll try to go for them, but if they are left open, they will definitely go for those, so we need to make sure they are closed. And then just like before, this door up here we're going to be leaving open. That way any of the enemies that spawn from the north or any of the enemies that spawn down to the southwest who decide to take the northern route to get to us will go through that open door. As for the sentry, we just place it in the room on the northeastern corner facing towards that open door. That way any enemies that come from that general direction have to go through the line of fire of the sentry. These 2 alarms can be fairly difficult to deal with just because your mines of seafoam and even sentries aren't going to be able to buy you enough time to work on every single one of the scans, especially if the scans are a bit trolly and they keep going all throughout the room. So I would say make sure you keep your head on a swivel, biotrack a person, tag enemies as often as you can. That way your teammates are fully well aware of where all the enemies are and they have a much easier time shooting at them and not getting blindsided over and over again. Especially if you have the security door to Zone 167, as the layout of this room can be a little bit annoying to deal with since there's so many different ways enemies can just sneak up on you and get a cheeky hidden. But once you have your defenses set up how you want to, you can activate the alarm, get to work on the scans, do whatever you need to do to survive, and once all the scans are finished, deal with any of the enemies that are still left alive, go out, grab your sentry, and pack up any mines that did not explode, and then you can head into the zone with your uplink terminal. And now that we have finally made it into Zone 166 or 167, it's time to look around, deal with all the enemies, grab any of the resources and resupply with them, and then look for our uplink terminal, and once we find it, we can start setting up our defenses for it. However, this is where things get a little bit complicated, not necessary for you the player, but more so for me, the dingus who's making the level guide, because between these 2 zones, there's a total of 6 different terminals, and any one of them can potentially be your uplink. And since all these terminals are in different rooms except for 2 of them, I now have to show you 5 different map overlays for this uplink. So I'm going to try to speedball through them a little bit, that way I'm not spending 7, 8, or 9 minutes just talking about the uplink portion of this level. So let's start off to the east inside Zone 167 with what I consider the most difficult uplink of the bunch. Because as you can see with this map overlay, there's 4 different spawn locations for enemies, every single one of them being only 1 room away from you, and there are 5 different doors they could potentially take to get into your room. So what I recommend you do is you shut all 5 of the doors, and if you do have 5 mines on hand, mine every single one of them, but don't seafoam any of the doors quite yet. Instead, you're going to want to initiate the uplink and then wait for enemies to start spawning in, and once they spawn in, biotracker person can tag them, and then as you see which door they're going for to get into your room, quickly run over to it, seafoam it, and then either keep seafoaming that one door over and over again if the waves keep coming from the one direction, or if they spawn in a different location, they come from multiple, try your best to ping pong back and forth between the doors and keep reapplying seafoam and keeping them out for as long as you possibly can. If a door does end up getting broken down early though, then I would recommend just quickly grabbing your sentry and placing it over near that open door if it still has ammunition left in it. That way if any future wave spawns from that same direction, they'll have to go through the line of fire of the sentry. If you are getting one of the other 2 terminals inside Zone 167 though, this is what your map overlay is going to look like, which is a whole lot simpler. There's only 3 different locations enemies can spawn from. There are 4 different doors it could take to get out of those 3 rooms, but there's only 1 door that leads directly into your room, so all you need to do is just shut those 4 outer doors, and if you have a bunch of leftover mines, you could mine all of them, and then the door that leads into your room, shut, mine, and seafoam it, and then just keep reapplying seafoam to the door throughout the uplink until either you run out of seafoam, or until you finish every single one of the codes, in which case you just let the door break open, the mine explodes, dealing with most of the enemies, and you can make your mad dash back to extraction. Now that we've done the ones in 167, let's hop over to the western side and talk about the uplinks in 166. Starting off with this one in the far back corner, which is really simple to set up for as well. As you can see, there's only 1 location enemies can possibly spawn from, and 2 doors between you and them. So shut, mine, and seafoam both of the doors, and then just keep reapplying seafoam to the door that leads directly into your room. If you get the one that's in the middle of the zone, a little bit further to the east, this is what your map overlay is going to look like, which as you can see, 2 different spawn locations, 1 to the far west and 1 to the far east. If enemies are spawning from the far west, they have the 2 doors they have to go through, so make sure both of those doors are shut, mined, and seafoamed. And if they're spawning from the far east, we're going to be taking advantage of our sentry as well as a funnel strategy by leaving these 2 doors right here open, and then all 3 of these doors we're going to leave shut. As for why this funnel strategy is good, it's because they will come in through the entrance at the top of the room, and they'll have to go down the set of ramps to actually get to where we are by the terminal, so our teammates can just play a little bit of a shooting gallery minigame on the enemies as they come down. And then finally, if you get this uplink terminal, which is a little bit further to the east, your map overlay is going to look like this. Once again, there are 2 different spawn locations enemies can spawn from. Don't be fooled by this one, by the way. This is actually in a room that's directly up above you, so this is not them spawning in the same area as you. And what you're going to want to do is make sure that these 2 doors are shut, mined, and seafoamed. These 2 doors you're going to want to leave open, that way you can try to get them to go through that funnel strategy. It's basically the same one as the one I just explained, although it's now in reverse. And then these 2 doors you're just going to want to make sure you simply leave shut. A very minimal chance they'll actually go through those doors, so you do not need to mine or seafoam them. And as for your sentry, sort of like you can see in the background footage, you can place it on the catwalk that enemies should be funneling through. That way if they come from that direction, they have to go through the line of fire of the sentry to get to you and your team. If enemies come from the southeastern corner, they'll have to take a bit of a shorter route to get to you, but you could have one person with the seafoam launcher just go down there and keep seafoaming that door over and over again if they have excess seafoam, or you and your entire team could just simply focus your attention on that direction and deal with the enemies as they're coming up to you. That was a lot of information. Hopefully that was pretty clear. If not, feel free to ask me questions in the description. I'm actually pretty sleepy right now, so I'm hoping that explanation was somewhat decent. But no matter which one of the uplinks you get, once you finish it and you put that 5th and final code in correctly, you and your team can either grab your sentry or just simply leave it behind and quickly book it all the way back to the beginning of the level, because your extraction scan will spawn in the room that you initially dropped down into, but enemies are going to continuously spawn in because there's now going to be an extraction alarm. So run past the enemies and completely ignore them, or shoot your way through them if you have to. You will be holding out for quite a while as this extraction scan gains progress incredibly slowly, and enemies are going to be spawning pretty close to you, so you're going to have to do a lot of shooting here. But if you've been playing like I've been suggesting up to this point in the level, you should have more than enough ammunition to hold out on extraction for the entire duration of it. And once you get that extraction scan up to 100%, you are done and you have beaten alternate R2B3. And that's all there really is to it. Alternate R2B3 on paper looks like a fairly simple and straightforward level, 2 alarms, a single uplink, and then holding out on extraction for a little while. But once you get into the thick of it, you start to realize just how many different variables there are to the level and how much planning ahead and thinking you need to do. And it's levels like these that I enjoy quite a bit, since it forces me to think and it tests my knowledge about the game, and they also have a fair amount of replay value to them, since you can play the level over and over again and you're not guaranteed to have the same experience every single time. As always though, thank you for watching this video all the way to the very end. I do hope that I was able to provide you with some assistance in beating this level. If you have any tips or tricks for this level that you want to share, any questions for me, or you just have something in general that you want to say, please do let me know down in the comments. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me, and if you want to join the community I'm building, there's a link to my Discord down in the description, as well as some other links. Among those links being one that'll take you to the official GTFO merch store, which I highly recommend you check out if you're a fellow GTFO enthusiast. Until next time, get your disinfectant packs ready, as we're about to see a whole lot of green fog, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next video.